Um, Resilience is sort of a buzzword that I think a lot of people are using these days. Even before the pandemic, there were a lot of conversations in certainly the field of psychology, which is my discipline. Um, but even outside of psychology, people are very fascinated with the concept of, how do we become more resilient? What determines who is a resilient person? And so there's been a lot of interesting research and a lot of discussions about this topic. And so what I wanted to do today, for those of you who are coming in orientation, is to talk to you a little bit about how do we cultivate resilience. So what are the things that we can do? What are the things that we can focus on? What sort of concepts do we need to understand in order to be resilient? And my feeling is that you are fortunate enough to be now a member of an elite university, and you're going to receive a first-rate education in the classroom, and you're going to leave Bentley with just a lot of education in whatever discipline you choose, and you're going to be well prepared in terms of your learned knowledge for whatever career you decide to pursue. But I think it's important, and that's why I'm grateful to be here today, to be also paying attention to what else you can get out of your college experience. And if you left with just an education, you would be missing out on a lot. And at least one little piece that I hope to sort of at least start your brain sort of thinking about are the lessons you can learn outside the classroom that will make you more successful in your career, more successful in your relationships, more successful in your life. And that is one of those things is resilience. And so today, what we're going to do is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about resilience, what it is. I'm going to talk to you about some related psychological concepts that sort of that try to help me make my point. And then at the end, we're actually going to do some exercises in the classroom that I think will start to sort of bring some of these concepts home. And my hope is, and I want you, I wish we were all together so that we could have sort of more of a free-flowing conversation. But I want you, even, it's just an hour and 15 minutes. I know you probably just had lunch, so you're probably having that post-lunch sort of snoozy feeling. But the extent to which you can think about, what kind of exercises or concepts that we're talking about today really resonate with you, and in what ways can you maybe start to incorporate these into your daily living. So, anyways, before we really get into resilience, I think it's important to understand the context in which we're having this conversation. And that is what's COVID, what we've been talking about for the past 2 years. And I'm sure all of you are sick and tired of talking about it. And frankly, so am I. The past 2 years has required a lot of struggle, a lot of sacrifice. And while our stories sort of look differently, there are a number of themes that I feel like really run through everybody's experience. And those themes include things like fear. We've all experienced fear as this virus has sort of taken over our lives. Fear for the safety of ourselves, fear for the safety of our loved ones, fear for the loss of experiences that we hope to have. And that's important to recognize. And then another theme that I think we've all experienced is grief. And when I say grief, I think most people start thinking about the lives that were lost as a result of this pandemic. Maybe that you lost someone close to you, or the grief of those kind of experiences. But grief is actually a larger concept that doesn't necessarily entail just loss of life. We're all grieving the loss of experiences. I imagine there are a number of you who in this room who have, maybe used to participate on a sports team, and because of the pandemic, were not able to compete in the way that they wanted to in their final years in high school. I imagine there are some people out there who missed out on maybe graduation or some other big milestones or rites of passage that should be a part of everybody's life. people are probably also grieving the loss of tradition. Certainly even now, 2 years into it, we're having holiday gatherings, which might not include everybody, and that's something that we're never going to get back. These are experiences that are now we have passed, and we just have to look back and understand that and accept that we will not be able to sort of have those kinds of experiences. And then finally, we have uncertainty. And uncertainty is a difficult one. If you had asked me even a few months ago, I mean, when we were originally planning this talk, the idea was that I was going to be in person and talking to you all, and like I said, having more of a conversation about these concepts. But here we are. Things have changed. If you had asked me, would we be wearing masks, come spring 2022, I would have said no. And now here we are, and most of us are wearing masks. We're having to upgrade to N95s. We are, while gratefully we're not doing any sort of remote education, we're still having to go into smaller groups and avoid gatherings and things like that. So life is still uncertain. And I would love to say I know what the fall is going to look like, but the truth is that we don't. And so uncertainty is certainly a challenge for us all. And so it's uncertainty that I think is really one of those themes that I think is really important to the conversation today. And because uncertainty is a concept that hits us as human beings hard. And the reason it hits us so hard is that it's our ability to predict the future is an essential aspect of what it means to be a human being. It's what separates us from the animal kingdom in many ways, and has made us sort of successful and able to master our environments. Sure, there are animals like squirrels and things like that that plan for the winter. They have these instincts within them. Okay, I need to start gathering nuts. I need to start making my nest and preparing those things. But this is all sort of instincts. As human beings, we're planful. We sort of understand, okay, the winter's coming. I need not only just to generally be prepared, I need to have certain equipment. I need to prepare for different storms. I need to, make sure that there's money set aside because I'm going to be having to, pay for plowing or something like that. That there are, it is what has made us successful throughout our existence, to be able to be planful. And so when our ability to predict the future is taken away from us, it creates a significant source of stress and concern and dis-ease, not disease, but dis-ease. And in a way that it doesn't impact. I have a dog, an Australian poodle mix, and my dog is just as happy today as he was 3 years ago, because he's not thinking about the future. He's not thinking about the past. He's living in the moment. And which, good for him. And I think there are some lessons we can learn from that. And we will sort of tuck into that in a few minutes. But I think the point is that as human beings, when we aren't able to see the future, we're challenged. And so that's why this has been a big struggle for us. But I also want to talk about this concept of locus of control. And this sort of has to do with its ability or our need to predict the future. And it also sort of ties in why we're talking about resilience. So in the field of psychology, we have a concept called locus of control. To explain this concept very generally, our locus of control is the way in which we assign blame to things that happen to us. So there are, for research purposes, we divide people into sort of two categories. We have people who have an internal locus of control and people who have an external locus of control. Now, of course, this is just for research purposes. The reality is that we all sort of fall along the spectrum and somewhere in between internal and external locus of control. Someone who has external locus of control, they are more likely to assign blame for things that happen to them to external forces. So, for example, someone with an external locus of control gets a bad grade on a test, or let's say they fail a test. The person with an external locus of control is going to say, okay, well, the reason I failed that test was because the material was too hard, or the professor didn't like me, or someone was tapping their foot and I kept losing concentration. And so for people with an external locus of control, that actually feels good in the moment. The reason that feels good is that they don't have to feel guilty or assign any sort of responsibility for what had happened for getting that bad grade to themselves. They are instead saying, well, it's not my fault. It was the professor's fault. It was the test was too hard, or it was that other person's fault. And in that moment, they feel okay and they continue with their lives, sort of leading their lives in the same way. Now, research will show that people who have an external locus of control, or more likely to have a more external locus of control, have more anxiety. Now, I wish we were having discussions so we could talk about this, but the reason they feel anxious is that, well, they have if they're assigning blame to external forces, there's nothing that they can do to actually change their environment or change the outcome the next time they have a test. These are things that are outside of their control. So, well, I can't help if the professor is going to create a hard test. I can't help if somebody is going to be distracting in class. There's nothing I can do. So they sort of live life in a way where life happens to them, and that creates anxiety and stress. Now, on the other hand, we have people who have an internal locus of control. Now, people with an internal locus of control are, like I said earlier, are more likely to assign things that happen to them to themselves. So again, we take the example of someone who gets a failing grade on a test. Now, the person with the internal locus of control are going to say, okay, well, the reason I did poorly on the test is, clearly I didn't study enough, or, I should have, I was going to go to the office hours, but I just never found time for it. I should have gone to the office hours. Or they're going to say, I should have, started taking notes on the lectures, and I didn't do that. And so, and so in that moment when they're sort of figuring out, okay, how do I figure out why I am where I am? They're saying it feels bad because they're saying, like, it was my fault. These are the things that I did. And so that's a harder route to take in the moment. But, and I will say in the research would suggest that if you're too much internal locus of control, you actually are more likely to feel depressed because, everything is your fault. Now, for most of us, that are more in the general range, you actually feel better in the long term because you're able to say, oh, okay, here are some things I can do differently the next time that will most likely change the outcome. And so people with an internal locus of control, while feeling bad in the moment when something bad happens, they actually are able to navigate those experiences, those challenges better, because they are able to see the extent to which they're able to identify ways in which they can change their behavior and engage in behaviors that are going to more likely have a better outcome. And so long-term studies would suggest that people with internal locus of control are more resilient, they are more confident, they're able to navigate challenges better because of this ability, even though, and the reason we avoid it is because it doesn't feel so good. So all of this is to say that part of cultivating resilience is developing and honing this ability to have an internal locus of control. So what is resilience? Well, resilience, by definition, is this capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. So there's this idea of being resilient means that you sort of can weather challenges and bounce back after something bad happens. And part of that ultimately requires us to have a good sense of the extent to which that we have control over our environments. If we are, and so let's take the example of the pandemic. For those of us who focus on the things that we don't have control over, we don't have control over whether there is another lockdown. We don't have control if another variant were to appear and to change life again for us. We don't have control over those things. And the extent to which we spin our wheels and spend our time focusing on those things that we don't have control over, we are just making ourselves more worried and more stressed. Not that, this is not to say we should ignore those things, but I think importantly, the people who have thrived during the pandemic, or one aspect of people who have thrived during the pandemic, are those people who are able to recognize, okay, how do I take care of myself? What are the things that I can do, given that I don't have control over this pandemic, that will allow me to be in the best position possible to weather whatever challenges that might come my way? And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We are going to be talking about decreasing focus on those things that we don't have control over and investing in those healthy activities that we do have control over that will make us more resilient in the face of challenges. And so, yes, we're talking about it in the context of COVID right now, but these are real skills. The more that you hone these skills in your lifetime, we're talking about, in your career, when there will be challenges, there will be problems, there will be things that come your way that were unexpected. In your life, in your relationships, we need to be able to understand what we don't have control over and try to decrease the extent to which we perseverate, which means to sort of think about over and over again about things that we don't have control over, and say, okay, well, what is it that I do have control over? Are there things that I can do differently that would maybe have a different income or outcome? Or are there things that I can do, invest within myself, so that I am in the best position possible to be able to thrive in the face of a challenge? So what are those things that we can do? What are the intentional activities we can do to put us in a position where we are most prepared to be able to weather whatever storm comes our way? And a lot of these things you're going to see, and these are just a few of them. You're going to look at this list and you're going to say, Peter, this is not mind-blowing. There's nothing on here that really is surprising. Maybe you would already do some of these things, or certainly, it's something that you read about or something that people talk about. There's nothing special about this list. But the reason I'm bringing this list is because it's important to reinforce, because the extent to which we actually engage in these things, it's not always as much as we should. When we get stressed, what are the first things that we sort of let go? What are the activities when we're feeling stretched for time that we're least likely to continue or most likely to sort of skip? Maybe we're staying up too late so we can study. Maybe we're sort of grabbing some unhealthy food as a way to sort of comfort ourselves, and we're doing that on a regular basis. Maybe we're not engaging in exercise or hanging out with our friends in a fun social environment because we have this assignment that we need to complete. And so again, this is not earth-shattering news, but what I'm trying to do is convey to you the extent to which this is actually really important stuff. This isn't just like stuff that we can sort of, when things get more difficult, that we can just sort of toss away. These are things that we should be investing in and day out on a daily basis in order to be able to be successful. So and again, so why don't we move on to sort of what we're going to sort of these exercises. So we're going to put some of these things into action, and I want to say, and I'll give you the link at the end of this talk, but the Counseling Center has created a series called the Good Vibes series, in which we address a number of these topics, some that we'll talk about today, and there are many more. And in fact, I was talking to one of the creators just a couple of days ago, and so I think we have like 13 or 14 on our website, but there's going to be another 10 on there by the end of the semester. So these are all sort of research-based activities that have been shown, not because anecdotally we've found that this is good, literally research suggests that if people are engaging in these activities, they are going to be more resilient. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to practice 3 of them. So I'm going to sort of introduce each activity, and then I'm going to turn it over to your OL leader, who's going to sort of go through the activity with you and sort of navigate some questions. And then once you're through navigating those questions, we're going to come back, and hopefully there's some information that your group can share with the whole group. But again, and I said this in the beginning, and I'll say it again, I really want you to think about, when you're engaging in these activities, how did you feel before and how did you feel after? Was there a change? Is this activity something that actually moved the needle for you in terms of feeling less stressed, more connected, feeling more resilient? And then if like sort of 1 of the or 2 of these are sort of resonating with you, spend some time thinking like, okay, well, is this something that I can actually do on a regular basis? Like maybe I wake up in the morning and I first thing I do is this thing instead of grabbing my phone, or whatever it is that you typically do. So let's get started. Okay, so the first concept we're going to talk about is social connection. Again, this is something not earth-shattering. Nobody's surprised that social connection is an important factor in terms of increasing resilience. But like I said, often it is the first thing we drop when we're feeling stressed. We're less likely to hang out with our friends. We're less likely to get together because we're worried that if we do, that we're not actually focusing on what we need to focus on to be successful. But the truth is that the extent to which you're engaging in this activity is going to make you more successful in the long run. So what is social connection? Well, I'll tell you what it's not. It's not social media. It's not your level of social connection is not measured by the number of people who follow you on whatever platform it is that you typically use. Social connection comes out of forming intimate and close relationships with people, sharing vulnerability, being able to feel safe with somebody to talk about whatever it is, whether it's deeply personal things or even just surface level things, and feeling accepted and included and welcomed. And the people who have higher levels of social connection, research has shown that there's increased feelings of happiness. So those people who are doing this are feeling happier more than those who don't. People who are more connected have longer lifespans. They are more likely to be protected from stress and anxiety. If you feel connected to a friend group, you're not as stressed and anxious about things that are happening to you or that are happening outside of those relationships because you're feeling supported. It also increases our ability to regulate our emotions. So that means that those people who are highly connected are better able to manage the highs and the lows that come with life. And then finally, not surprisingly, it boosts self-esteem. So people who have more close relationships feel better about themselves. I mean, that's pretty much self-explanatory. People, feel good if they feel like other people accept them and for who they are. And so, yeah, that's clear. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a brief exercise that, we're not creating deep relationships here, but the idea is just getting you into a mode of practicing what it's like to share personal things with people in order to plant the seed of actually developing closer relationships. So we're going to do something called the phone background game. Hopefully everybody has a phone. If they don't, I have some ideas. But what I want you to do in your group is to break into pairs. So, ideally you're going to pair off with somebody either you just met or you don't know that well, or maybe you're just happen to sit next to them. And what I want you to do is to open up your phone and share what the background is. Now, some people, it's just the normal, wallpaper or whatever. But for many of us, we use either the lock screen or the background screen as a way of putting in a picture that means something to us. And so it's personally meaningful in a different way than just some random picture, than just a random wallpaper. And usually it means that when we open it up, we smile and we feel good about that. And maybe it's people we care about, maybe it's an experience that we had, maybe I don't know, but either way, it means something to you. And so what I'd like you to do is to take turns with that other person and share why you chose that picture and why it's meaningful for you. What is it about the particular people in that? Or why does it make you smile? Or just why is it interesting or intriguing for you? What motivated you to sort of say, this picture is special enough that I want to see it every time I open up my phone? Now, for those who don't have like a special picture on their phone background, you could just choose, like, maybe there's a picture you've taken on your phone within the past 10 shots or something like that, and choose that. And then for those of you who don't have a phone or don't have any pictures on your phone, what I'd like you to do is just tell the other person the story of coming to Bentley, just briefly. What is it? Who helped you get here? Sort of why you chose Bentley? Something that sort of conveys a little bit, not something you would say during an interview, but something that would actually convey, all right, what are some personal reasons why you came to Bentley? And then then the OLs will ask some of these questions and get into it, and then we'll come back and we'll hear from the different groups if there was anything that came up that was interesting for the whole group to hear. All right, so let's go ahead and do it, and just let me know when you're all done. Ready? I hope I'm not interrupting some interesting discussion, but wanted to hear from the OLs. I'm curious, what were some of the reactions to this activity?
So we thought it was really an interesting way to get to know each other, because we saw like what other people valued or like what made them happy to look at every day. So we just thought it was a really cool activity.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. It really is a fascinating way, and so much better than talking about the weather or traffic or things like that. I think what you're saying is that this is, it almost sort of, I guess, fast tracks a more of a close conversation, more than just small talk would. Any other reactions? Or just go ahead and speak if
Yeah, we were just kind of talking about how sometimes it's the stuff on your background is stuff that it's like more personal to you. So each of us kind of shared something that was a little bit more vulnerable, which was kind of cool because, normally you post things on Instagram that like you want everyone to see, but your phone background is definitely more personal to you, which is kind of cool.
That's actually a really interesting observation. You're right. Like, and if we had more time, I would love to unpack that, because I'm really fascinated by social media and how it's different. How is it that how and why is it that different? Do we possibly choose different pictures to post publicly as opposed to sort of, and the assumption is that whatever we put on our phone is something we, is moving for us, or is, why is it that we might make a different decision there? So that's really interesting. And actually, if anybody has an idea about that, I would love to hear thoughts about that. I guess, so the last question is actually something I'm also curious about. Sounds like this was a good exercise in terms of maybe having a more personal conversation with somebody you didn't know. But I'm curious, do people think that after having had this conversation, maybe if you go your separate ways from somebody you haven't seen, do you think going through that exercise would make it more likely that you would maybe say hi to that person if you saw them in the future? Okay. Well, I mean, my guess would be that yes, or at least, certainly it would move the needle more than just having sat next to that person during an orientation session. And it might that again, I think this is sort of, if you saw this person and maybe they told you a story, oh, this is a picture of my younger sister who I'm super close with and I miss her so much. You might see that person and like remember the feeling of having being, even though it's this one little experience, you're that much more socially connected to that person. You say, oh, that's right, that's whomever who has this really close relationship with his sister, is really nice, and like more about that person. So I want to encourage you all in terms of taking this, what you've learned from this is that, okay, we're learning a few things. One, there's a little bit of vulnerability goes a long way to feeling connected. Two, the more, trying to distinguish between what it means to, share something publicly and how that's different from maybe what's personal about the pictures that you choose to put on your phone. And why is it that we make different, we have a different decision tree with regards to what we post publicly and what makes us feel good personally, and how might we integrate more of those personal pictures or conversations or stories with the people who surround us as a way of fostering social connections. And I want you to think about, if you're living on campus or off campus, or maybe there are opportunities where you're getting to know people and, you sort of a game, everybody take out their phone and let's do this. And I'd love to, hear that story. Or, I've done it another way where you sort of like randomly go through your pictures and then like randomly select one and then tell people the story of like why you took that picture. So anyways, something to think about, because getting back to this concept, the more socially connected we feel, the more the higher self-esteem, the more confident we are, we feel better about ourselves, we're more protected from anxiety and depression. We're also, in essence, more resilient when bad things happen. So let's move on to the next concept. All right. Okay. So this is a stress reduction, stress relief through relaxation. So when I talk about stress relief through relaxation, what I'm really sort of focusing on are things like meditation, things like mindfulness, things like progressive muscle relaxation. But I mean, honestly, I'm talking about, in some ways, reading a book, going for a walk. There are many ways in which we sort of we can engage in an intentional activity to relax ourselves. And those of us who engage in these on a regular basis, it's funny, whenever we do these exercises with a group of people, everybody loves them. They're always like, oh, it's the best thing ever. But I know it because I've done it myself. I'll be like, all right, I'm going to do this every day. And it doesn't happen for whatever reason. So why is it that we have that we engage in these things that we know are good for us, but we don't do them? Why is it we're not carving out the time? We'll carve out time for things like studying, or maybe for, chores or something like that, but we don't actually carve out time for ourselves with the same sort of intensity. So what I would like, so again, in stress relief through relaxation, it teaches us to manage our body's natural response to stress. So when we get stressed, our body responds in different ways. Like physically, we have physical changes. Sometimes our heart rate increases. Sometimes our digestion changes. Sometimes we get headaches. Sometimes we have muscle tension. I'll tell you, when I get stressed, like my back tightens up like you wouldn't believe. It's like a rock. And that's not because I'm doing anything on purpose. It happens outside of my awareness. And it's only when I'm aware that I'm stressed that I sort of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was holding that much tension in my muscles. So, but engaging in these intentional activities will teach us to monitor our body for stress and be able to sort of manage it when we notice our body changing in different ways. Engaging these activities also increases our focus and awareness. Now, the funny thing is that many times people who get this, they report afterwards feeling sleepy, like, oh, I just did a meditation, I'm feeling very tired. It was really so relaxing. But the more you do it, it's almost like, whenever you take that like 5 or 10 minute nap, wake up from that feeling amazing. That when you get good at meditation and things like that, it actually helps your focus. So I'll often, when I'm working with students one-on-one and they're talking about stress and, studying for an exam or something like that, I'll say, well, why don't you get up and take a walk, for 10 minutes around the block. And, at that moment, people say, oh, I can't do that. I'm in the middle of studying, I need to use that time. And the truth is that taking that 5 or 10 minutes for something as simple as a walk is a way to actually increase your ability to retain that material. It helps us practicing for dealing with stressful situations in the future. So the more that you engage in meditation, even when you're not stressed, you have those skills now of like things that you can do, before you're about to do something stressful, like give a presentation or take an exam or something like that. You already have those skills practiced that you can sort of put yourself in a better place to be more successful. And then it also helps us focus on the present moment, kind of like my dog, like I shared earlier. Too often we spend our time thinking about the past and the ways in which that didn't go well. Oh, I said something stupid, I'm so embarrassed, or maybe I made that mistake on that exam. I can't believe I was so careless. Or we also think about the future of like, oh, well, what if I don't do well in this class? Then this is going to happen. Or what if, I get up to give that presentation and I forget everything and I can't say anything. And so instead of focusing, so we're spending a lot of our time in the future and in the past, and we're sort of missing the present. So almost engaging in these activities is a way of grounding yourself and being like, you know what, I'm not there in the past and I'm not there in the future. I'm right here. And in right here, I can't feel anxious and I can't feel sad because I'm in this moment right now. Anyway, so what we're going to do now for the activity is, we're going to listen to a pre-recorded guided progressive muscle relaxation exercise. So on the Counseling Center's website, we have a link to a YouTube page in which we have recorded a number of different relaxation exercises. There's most of them are recorded by Hope Forbes, which is one of our psychologists. And this one is sort of a guided progressive muscle relaxation where you're going to be sort of scanning your body and releasing and creating less tension. And then at the end of the recording, there'll be some questions, but after the questions, the OL will sort of help navigate those questions with you. I'm going to play it through here, but please let me know if for some reason it's not creating noise or if you guys can't hear it, or so let me give this a shot.
This exercise is called progressive.
So just checking in. Can people hear that? Give me a thumbs up if you can.
You go, Peter.
It's good? All right. Okay, before I start it again, I want everybody to get into like a comfortable position, in your chair as much as you can be in those chairs, and just settle down and listen up.
Muscle relaxation. The goals of this exercise are to increase your awareness of how different muscle groups feel when they're both tensed and relaxed. Muscle tension can be a subtle but common cue that you're feeling stressed. Learning to let go of the tension in your body is a helpful way to manage stress. During this exercise, we will go through several muscle groups. I'll ask you to first tense that muscle group for about 10 seconds, and then to release that muscle group. I'll also ask you to notice how this feels in your body. Let's begin. Tense your feet in your shoes. Spread your toes and arch your feet so only your heel and the balls of your feet are touching the soles of your shoes. Now relax your feet. Notice how it feels to relax them. Tense your thighs. Tense them as tightly as possible while keeping your knees together. Notice how it feels to hold that tension in your thighs. And release. Notice how your thighs feel as you relax them. Pull your stomach in as tightly as possible, as though you want your stomach to touch your spine. And release. Notice how it feels to relax your stomach. Tense your fingers. Spread them out and stretch them as far as they will go. And release. Notice how your fingers feel as they curl back into their typical position. Tense your forearms and your biceps. Tense them as tightly as possible. And release. Notice any feelings of warmth as you relax your arms. Raise your shoulders up to your ears. Push them as high as they can go. And release. Notice how it feels to relax your shoulders. Raise your eyebrows as high as you can. Push them to the top of your forehead. And release. Notice how your face feels as you relax your eyebrows. Finally, tense your whole body, your feet, legs, stomach, arms, fingers, shoulders, and face. Hold your body tense for 10 seconds. And release the tension. Notice how your body feels as you allow those muscles to relax. Stay with that feeling of relaxation for another moment. Now take a deep breath and begin to bring yourself back to the present moment. Orient yourself to the room, the people present, and the situation.
All right, everybody. So I actually noticed that we are getting low on time. And so as much as I wanted to have a discussion about this, I like the next part. I don't want to not have enough time for the next part. So, but I do want you all to sort of think about this exercise. What was it like? If it was helpful for you, you know that these are resources on our YouTube page, but also think about ways in which you can engage in this. And that means maybe, you know, putting this on your, you know, carving out time specifically to do these kinds of things. You know, maybe it's every night before bed, maybe it's when you wake up in the morning, maybe it's in the afternoon after lunch, something like that. But carve out, I mean, that was like maybe 5 or 6 minutes. So it doesn't take a lot of time, and it's really good for you in terms of increasing your focus. And like I said, ultimately, we're talking about making you more resilient when things happen to you in the future. So sorry to cut the discussion short, but there will be discussion on this next topic. So what we're going to be talking about is gratitude. Again, with the buzzwords, Peter, yes. So gratitude is something that a lot of people are talking about. You know, certainly when I started, you know, researching it in 2009, it was something that, you know, people were writing about all the time, you know, books and articles on the benefits of gratitude. And the thing about gratitude, it's kind of like the relaxation, where whenever we engage in it, it is uniformly positive. And the exercise we're going to go through, every time I've done it, I mean, everybody says, this is a wonderful thing. And the question is, why don't we do it more often? And I don't really have a great answer for that. Maybe we get rushed for time. Maybe we forget how good it feels. Maybe, you know, it's just one of those things that we need to be more intentional about. Anyways, point is that gratitude, for those of you who don't know exactly what it is, it's our ability to appreciate what we have in our lives that bring us joy and value. So this has been especially important in the context of a pandemic, when so much has been taken away from us. We've lost out on experiences. We've lost out on, you know, we've had a lot of calamity. We've, you know, college is looking completely different. And so if we were to focus on the negative aspects of the pandemic solely, we would be feeling pretty bad. And so taking a moment and taking a step back and sort of examining your life. So about, you know, what is good, what is going well. Maybe there are people in your life who care about you, who you have a good relationship with. Maybe it's that there are certain people that you've been in contact with that you might not otherwise have been in contact with them. Maybe you've formed new relationships. I don't know, but it's something to sort of take a moment and pause and reflect upon. Here are some of the ways in which, you know, it's improving sleep and self-esteem and psychological health, physical health, all these kinds of things. So we need to be engaging it more. And the nice thing about gratitude, it's not only reflecting upon those things. So some people will keep a gratitude journal in which, you know, every evening they'll write 3 things in which they're grateful for that are in their lives. Or maybe they'll create a grateful collage and make a you know, picture on the wall of things that bring them joy. So those are great things for us, but we're going to take it a step further, because another great thing about gratitude is actually expressing it to others when we are grateful for the people in our life. And so, because this has a twofold, you know, effect. This is not only good for us, but it actually is good for that person. And then being able to hear from that person, it's like it magnifies everything. It's great. It potentiates the impact of gratitude. So what I would like you to do, again, is to pull out your phones. And I want you to take a moment just to think about coming here to Bentley and someone who, along the way, who helped you get here. Now, that could be somebody who helped you move in. It could be like, it could be one of the OLs, or it could be somebody maybe a parent or a sibling or a friend who introduced you to the school, or maybe proofread an essay, or somebody, a teacher who sort of inspired you to apply here or to move in this direction. And so I want you to take a moment, think about that person, think about the ways in which they contributed to you being here today. And I want you to text that person and text them, hey, I'm sitting in orientation right now, and I just wanted to say dot, 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 dot. So then you come up with that. And so, and of course, within that, expressing gratitude, thanks, thank you, or I appreciate, or I have, I so care about the fact that you took the time, those kinds of things. So take a moment, text that, and then we'll check back in just a couple of minutes. Okay, so I'm sorry that we're so low on time. We don't really have time to discuss, but ultimately, I love hearing, if people got responses, what kind of responses they got, and I guess what I'd like you all to do is just reflect upon this small action, which took just literally 30 seconds, and think about the ways in which you can integrate this into your life. Now, you don't necessarily think that something about gratitude has to do with resilience, but it absolutely does. It makes you feel better about yourself. It makes you feel more confident. It makes you feel like a better person. And gratitude, it doesn't have to be for something big. It can be for something small. Maybe there was a barista at Starbucks who was, extra friendly, or maybe somebody, helped you, held the door for you, or something like that. There are ways in which we can be grateful for the small things in our life that will help you in the long run. So again, I'm sorry that we don't have more time to discuss this. I really appreciate you all coming to this and hopefully paying attention. I wish I was there to see to the extent to which people are paying attention. But I want you to continue to practice these things. Again, go to the Good Vibes series. We have, there's a link right there. If you go to the Counseling Center webpage, there'll be a link towards the Student Health Resource page. And you scroll down, there's Good Vibes there. So lots of things to look at and practice. I hope this has been helpful for you. And, if you have any ideas or thoughts, or want to ask me a question, then feel free to email me. Pretty easy to find my email address. I'm pforkner@bentley.edu, director of the Counseling Center. Anyways, good luck at Bentley, and thank you very much.